Hello, folks. In this opportunity, we can consider one implementation about of one backend service in Node.js. Node.js is a spectacular framework to create different applications, real-time applications, APIs, desktop applications, services, microservices, and others. In this case, Node.js is one implementation of the JavaScript V8 language into the server side. In this case, I am use one architecture uh, that using so many concepts of clean architecture code. Well, to start this process, I explain my principal structure of the project. In this case, I have one source with the one app.js file that configure and set up these some components that is required to one create microservice like to show in the screen. In this case, I equipped the Express framework to enable all behaviors of the Node microservice and use the body parser to generate all transpilation of JSON code in the middleware of application. Well, I have one user control reference and the one user repository reference, and I have the execute my application in the port 3000, like you show in the screen, and I have one injection of the user repository in the user controller. The configure API in this case is with empty name of the user controller because it start with a slash only. For example, this configure the application to listen into the port 3000, like you show in this case. I try to explain this structure. I have one folder to controllers, one folder to define all models of the application, and one folder to define the repositories of the app service, and the services to define the service facade to the expose all methods and behaviors to connect to the database um, in the backend. And I have one folder to specifications to with the file to uh, different validations of one entity that is the user. This is a CRUD component to create, delete, update, and read the data from the users of the database. The database is implemented into um, um, PostgreSQL services. That database is exposed into the cloud in the render servers, and you can show this using, for example, this execution. I have these users to principal data into the database. Well, to start the process, I'm open the user controller. The user controller have different routes configured with the router express functionality to define, for example, get all users, get a user by ID, and the other method to create user, to edit user, and delete user. This is the basic functionality of the CRUD application. Well, um, The second part is the models. We have one object that name is response with three properties like to message, errors, and result to storage and response the data from the backend and the front-end services. Well, the next is the model user that have the implementation of properties mapped from the response of the row in the database that execute the command to into the repository and map to the object finally like you show in this code with these properties. The repositories is the implementation to um, particular methods like to get all users is select all from a users table. The get user by ID with filter ID, for example, and the create user is the insert into the database with this syntaxes and it's necessary to put the returning all to get the result data and get the ID of the user and response to the data from the backend and the front-end services. The update user is the method to update the user using these syntaxes and statement of the CQL. Well, the next is the delete user that is executing the delete from the users with the ID is equals to some data that I send from the client. And other helper methods is the user exists and the email exists and the nickname exists that ensure that the email and the nickname is unique into the database. Well, and this is all about of the repository and the services is one facade to communicate the two layers, the user controller and the repositories component. And you can use other composition logic, for example using the user specification validation like to show in this part of the code to the add user and the update user. And it's necessary, for example, validate the email is unique, the username name is unique, and others. Well, the next is the specification, where I have the implementation of the simple validation of one user, the not empty data, the no repeat email, the email is really email, and other implementations like to ensure that the user is adult person and for example the nickname no exists and the password is valid. Validating, for example, the string of the password have uppercase, lowercase, special characters, and numbers. And well, this is all. We can run to verify this in application. Well, I start from the app.js file and I try to run the application and well the server is running in the port 3000 like to show in this part of the screen. Well, the first test is get all data from the users. I try to get all data. The implementation show the next result. All items that is tree from the database. In the database, you can show 21, 20, and 26. And the result is 21, 20, 20, and 26. Well, I try to test with the get by ID method. In the database, you have, for example, 20. And in the API, you can put the 20 into the parameters of the query string and result with the send command, and you can get the user that ID is 20. Is only one result. Well, if you can test this, for example, in the user controller, I put into the user by ID one breakpoint to verify this functionality. Well, I execute and pass to the visual code and advance with the execution. The query string have 20, that is the user ID. Verify that is number and not is empty and is set into the application. And the next is called the user service get user by ID. Initialize the response object and execute the get user by ID into the repository that immediately execute the select all from where ID user and pass this object to this constant, and you have the data from this user into the database. And well, the execution result is the next into the postman. You have the data of this user. Well, and now I try to test this method that is the created user. You have, for example, this email, and the username name is, for example, Pepper. Well, to ensure that this and this is the unique into the database, and I try to execute. If all I good, this execute, and the result into the postman is one object with the new ID 36, and the nickname is Peppa, and the user is okay. And to test this insertion, you can use the pgadmin to verify the data created before. You have the user Peppa, and you have the user ID. Well, now I am test that the is not possible create two users with the same data, like to email, like to nickname. If I try to send the result of the service, is necessarily one validation with the email already exists and the nickname already exists. If I change for the Pepas, for example, and user 010203 and that live.com I send, and the user is immediately created into the database. I verify this information, and I have the 37 user with the Pepas and this email. But now it's necessary, for example, test the edit user, and the edit user have the for example, I try to use the get by ID user to get all data that I require to update from the database. And the data is the next. I have this data, and I try to change this payload into the body request. The first is they put the ID 37 and the name, for example, Pedro. The second name, Jose. The last name is Rodriguez. Uh, Torres, por ejemplo. The birthday is possible in 1980, and the nickname is Pejo. Pejo. And the email I try to change with the Pejo, for example, and I change this password. And well, the number, for example, is this, and the phone code area is uh, 57. And what? I try to send, and immediately we can review and test the updated data. We have, for example, first name string, second name string, and others. Well, let me to execute this code and verify this change into the database. Well, in this case, the result is the object with the new values or values of the data from the database. If I try to um, uh, verify this information, we can change. We can show the changes into the database, like to show in this table, for example. Well, I test different endpoints, and now I try to test the 37 user. In this case, I have the delete verb with the JSON by ID 37, and I try to send. And the result is the user deleted successfully. And the result into the database is the data change with the 37 register is not more into the database. Well, mm, to verify, for example, is not necessarily more advanced code. Um, you can show, for example, in the Postman, the get all users method and execute the endpoint and verify 21, 20, 26, 36, and 36. Excuse me. Okay, this is all. This is a great implementation in Node.js using the uh, PostgreSQL database. And if you have a comment, you let me your comment, observations, and any idea that improve the communication between the community and me. And well, this is all, and I hope that you enjoyed with this video, and see you again in the next video. Okay.